I think I was opposed to Clinton. In fact, I know I was. Wait a minute. I have a movie called Citizen Stan. Excuse me, it came back to me. You've seen that movie, right, Dan? Citizen Stan, where I have an argument with Mort Halpern on this very issue in the documentary. And Mort Halpern is defending it, and I'm opposing it, and I'm saying it's just like Vietnam. So I don't have to Google it. I'll just send you, give me your name, and I'll send you a copy. But I'm not going to say, let me just end on this. I don't claim, you know, it was a very nice introduction. You know, I think I've gotten it right more often than I've gotten it wrong. But let me tell you, one of the dumber things that I wrote an article saying I thought George W. Bush would be a pretty good president. I did. I thought he hadn't been a half-bad governor in Texas. I thought he would learn some lessons from his father that, you know, I didn't think he'd be our savior or anything, but I thought he'd have his head screwed on right. You know, I had no idea he'd turn the government over to these neoconservative nutcases. You know, and I don't mean to be disparaging of them in the sense that maybe they make good college lecturers or they'd be good to have in debates, but the idea, I mean, I'd have doubts if they turned the government over to me, and I'm relatively sane. Turning it over to Richard Pearl and Wolfowitz and these people is madness. Absolute madness, and somehow this was done. It was done over the objection of all the people that his father had trusted, and so forth. So my feeling is, you know, I'm not going to be one to say I've never taken a stupid position, I've never been wrong or something. What I'd like to think is I work at it and try to get it right. I'd like to think I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and ask myself, did I blow it? You know, I'd like to think that I will correct myself. I'd like to think that I can be held accountable. You know, I mean, I've had conversations with Daniel Ellsberg where he tells me I get things wrong. He told me that twice this afternoon. You know, you know, so, or I remembered a name wrong or something. I don't shine it off. And I'm not running the U.S. government. I don't shine it off because, first of all, I don't think it's the right thing to do. I don't think it's a human thing to do. I think people bring up information contrary to your analysis. You ought to think about it. That's why I began this talk by saying, you know, maybe Hayek and von Mises were right. You know, well, what's scary about our situation now is not just our government, but our whole sort of professional class. The thing that was being discussed before, these people who, when she was working in the Pentagon, knew better. That these people don't speak up. I keep getting back to that bottom line. What is going on? You know, what is going on? I mean, I meet them all the time, and they tell me, yeah, it sucks, it's bad. You know, well, why don't you say something? Here, I got my tape recorder. Let's talk. Oh, no, it's not the right moment. You know, so what you have to ask yourself, and I guess you got a grand theory about government corrupting and so forth, but I find it in the private sector. I find it all over the place. You know, that people don't have that sense that truth matters. That truth, before everything, let me just end on this. It's to me a key point. What I've learned in my life, you know, and one reason I'm against statism, I've seen plenty of states that, you know, hurt people in the name of saving them and so forth, all over the world, you know. I remember I interviewed Castro when he told me why he had to round up homosexuals in Cuba, you know, for their own good or something, you know. You know, so we've seen these horrors that are done in the name of states and so forth, you know. And what I've learned from this whole long life is, you know, that we do need these limits. We do need accountability, okay? And that old thing, that freedom makes you stronger. You know, the old marketplace of ideas, okay? That we used to take seriously. That good ideas, truth drives out error, all right? What have we had instead? The creation of an atmosphere in which there's no truth-seeking, okay? So error dominates. And if I think of my work as a journalist, I always think, well, wait a minute, why did it remain for me to make this point? And as I mentioned before, I interviewed every president from Nixon on, you know, till this current one, up to this current one. I've interviewed these guys. I've been around. I've interviewed plenty of senators, plenty of experts, and so forth. And I sit there and I think, wait a minute, why didn't you read Khrushchev's diary and know that Stalin did not like Mao Zedong and preferred Chiang Kai-shek, and that the Sino-Soviet dispute really started in the late 20s, and what the hell was this foreign policy all about? Why don't you have that sense of complexity? I gave a speech here in Washington not long ago for my Playing President book, and I said, you know, Colin Powell said if he had just read Bernard Fall, you know, Bernard Fall had been a French soldier and then was a reporter, then died stepping on a landmine accompanying American troops. He said, if I had just read Bernard Fall, he says this in his autobiography, I would have known the Vietnam War never made any sense. So I repeated that, and a woman in the audience turned out to be Bernard Fall's widow, Dorothy Fall, and she said, well, why didn't he read Bernard? The books were in the bookstore. They were available. You know, so when I think of what I've been able to do and others that are, you know, Cy Hirsch, any of the journalists that I respect, you know, it's not that we read tea leaves. And it's not that we're particularly bright. It's just that we bothered to look. You know, and we didn't let them put the blinders over, and the others deliberately avoid looking. You know what the distinction is? They don't take positions, they position themselves. Think about that. That is the standard, whether you're a TV pundit, whether you're a big editor, whether you're a politician, or so forth. You don't say, I must take a position because lives are at stake. You know? My wife is writing a book with Mary Tillman, the mother of Pat Tillman. The Tillman, Pat and Kevin Tillman, we published on our site, two of the most marvelous people when you read their history, the whole family, third son and so forth. These are people that had big careers. Kevin was a baseball player, you know, Cleveland in the front, and Pat had a $6 million contract. Response to 9/11, they say, we got to sign up. It shouldn't just be the children of poor kids. We got to go do this thing, you know, set an example. And then they're sent to Iraq, which they don't believe in, because they were smart, and they'd done some research, and they carried books with them, but they went along, and they served their tour of duty. And then Pat was given a deal, well, why don't you go home now? You've done it. We got our poster. And he said, no, I signed up to get bin Laden. You know, and he asked to stay in, and he goes to Afghanistan, and then what do? He gets killed, and the most benign explanation, okay, friendly fire, you know, accident, what have you. What happens? They start lying about it within an hour. Everybody on the ground knows. His brother comes back, and they lie to him. They're instructed to lie to his brother, who was in the same unit but in a different area. He comes back to the camp. Where's Pat? You know, and they lie. First they say they don't know, and then it was friendly fire, and they knew the truth. The guy accompanied a body back with him, knew the truth. It was under orders, said, you will be court-martialed if you tell the truth. So the lying, it just goes on every level. And it besmirches, you know, the people. It stains people who make sacrifice like Pat Tillman and Kevin Tillman. It's absolutely outrageous. And people who know the truth on the whole chain of command, because plenty of them knew it, right up to the White House. They knew this was lies, but they wanted to keep the poster boy image. They wanted to be able to say at halftime shows in professional football games, oh, this great hero and so forth died. You know, it's like Jessica Lynch. Yes, a heroic woman. She's heroic because she wouldn't lie. She wrote an honest book, and they tried to use her. So if you want to, my report card on this society right now at this advanced age is, yes, we are in terrible shape. I don't know if we're in terrible shape because of the Articles of Confederation. I don't need to keep picking on that. And I don't know if the libertarian thing is the solution. Where I will agree with what I've heard at this conference, you know, and it was, you said to me at the end of this conference, you will be a libertarian. Okay, but what I will tell you is we are in terrible shape. We have no control of our government. We do not have adults washing the store. We are lied to at every turn, and we have a governmental process that corrupts people, corrupts them in the extreme, so that you cannot count on them to do the right thing that they should be doing, that we pay them to do, that they're supposed to be there to do, no matter their education, no matter what church they go to, no matter what ideology they follow. They end up being liars, whether they're in a Democratic or Republican administration, and that's a very sad commentary on the state of our culture at this point in our history. Thank you.